So, if you click this video, you're witnessing a very rare moment in your life, and also in my life. I just randomly wanted to build a coaster. And that's already it. We are building a coaster. But I decided to turn that into a community coaster. More about that later. I have actually 3 parts of a little concept work at the end of this video. And no worries, it's no AI, it's just me, doodling a little bit. But more about that later. Let's brief you in on what I'm doing. And again, I have no clue what was happening in my mind. I just randomly, it's been a couple days ago, I sat on my computer and I was like, okay, which kind of game should I play? Shall I record something? Shall I do something for funsies? Whatever. And then I decided that evening to do the one thing that I wanted to do the most without thinking about doing a YouTube video or just any kind of content. And it just happened that I wanted to build a coaster. And this is, for me personally, I mean, if you followed my channel, you know that coasters are more likely a thing I have to do to theme it at the end of the day. But in this specific case, it's actually the opposite. I wanted to build a coaster because I had a certain layout in my head, which again, it's very, very rare that this happened. But I just had that wing coaster design in my head that I wanted to have at the actual 4th lake we have in the 4-lake forest. And you know what, I was like, okay, you know what, when I want to do this, I shouldn't stop my body, my whole system from doing that. And so I went on building this. I must admit, I have done a couple of rather unusual elements in this build, at least like the first elements. It's a bit of a weird top edge over here that just leans to the right and then turns back down to the left, getting us into a swing for a pretty huge roll kind of thing. It's almost like a 0G roll in mid-air. And then we have a very fast-paced 2 almost like half helix situations. The first one going to go left-handed. And then we have a bit of a switchback to the right-hand side with a huge airtime moment. And then especially the people who are sitting on the inner side of the first left-hander will get a great airtime moment into the right-hander. And then we do have a similar element after that one for the people sitting on the right-hand side, so giving both people actually a similar kind of airtime moment. Before we will then go into a half loop. And I wanted to do a coaster that is actually something more normal than usual. Like, you've seen a couple of coasters I've done that were, I guess technically they were pretty good, but they were either way too long or they were like, let's say, a little bit too fantasy-ish, and realistically, physics-wise, they would work, but no manufacturer would build it that way. And I think this coaster, at the end of the day, is one of the very few coasters I've ever built that is pretty much in line. Oh, my voice just went somewhere. That is pretty much in line with what B&M, for example, could do. And specifically, B&M is a very interesting manufacturer at this point because I just had a brief chat to Mr. Silverred lately, and he also had a look at this design. I sent him a screenshot, and he was like, "Hey, that's pretty okay." And because I've been chatting with him for over 10 years now about coasters, and I've been pretty bad at coaster designs at the beginning. I got better and better when it comes to shaping and doing stuff like that. But I think one of my biggest issues always was that I refuse to do these kind of standard elements. Like, I refuse to doing these very typical, every coaster of B&M blah 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 has to start with this element, and then you go either this or that element, because that's what I've done in 3 coasters in the world, And funnily enough, over the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years, in general, new coasters have really broken with that rule. There's a lot of more individual, more creative, more freedom in the coaster designs. Like, a lot of coasters have been done, like Terran, for example, or Fly, or also, Lesh coaster, for example. Like, obviously that's a pretty new coaster and has no reference design or whatever. But the coasters in general also don't really follow old kind of rules. And the only manufacturer that still held with this a little bit more was B&M. And B&M also is a little bit on the back foot at the moment, just in general. Like, they are still building coasters, obviously, but it's like when we speak about exciting new coasters in the last couple of years worldwide, it's more like the names of Intamin or Vekoma that pop up a lot more often. And I was like, okay, I'm still going to go with B&M here, and I'm trying to do something if they were to go a bit more you know, a bit more random, a bit more free. And again, the coaster, I think, shaping-wise and like, let's say force-wise and ride-wise, this is exactly how it could work. It has some pretty typical kind of wing coaster elements that you would need to have that cool wing coaster effect. And I tried to have, like, it has like a little bunny hop over here. We're gonna have a helix. We're going to have like a dive loop, like typical kind of things that you would see on a wing coaster. But like, in my mind, that was like, you know, if for like Forest already had like a pretty interesting sidecar coaster from Automax, like Intermin obviously, and we do also have a suspended coaster, which I don't really know what exact manufacturer that was. I do believe it's Vekoma, but I'm not entirely sure. I think it's the new gen Vekoma one I did over there. But anyways, here you can see, by the way, the helix going into a last element. I was struggling a little bit with the station because I wanted to have a dual station, like not a dual station design, I should say a separate unload and load station design, which is why I needed to fiddle around a little bit with the final part of the coaster. But I think I found a very good solution with like a bit of a little area going into a reverse dive loop. Well, it's actually not a dive loop, obviously. It is a oh no, hold on, it is actually a dive loop, and then it goes back into a last little airtime moment before meandering back into the station. But yeah, as I said, like when it comes to theming and when it comes to specific areas in my parks, or like theming of a coaster, that very often happens in my head, and I have these ideas, I note them down, I do scribbles and stuff like that, and like the problem with these things is I very often lack the coaster that belongs to this very idea. And so sometimes I ask other people, you know, Sylph has already done a couple of coasters for me that I then at the end did theme. Sometimes my brother helps out to build a coaster, you know, and other people also have jumped in building a coaster for me. But like I think I needed to just take that moment where I had that one idea. So it is this will be my very first area in a park, my very first, like not heavily but kind of nicely themed coaster that originated from a coaster idea. And so please mark that moment in your life, because if you've been following around for 10 years now, that is a first. That's the first time this happened to me. I mean, I have done random coaster designs in the past, but they were most likely because that coaster was new to the game, or that coaster was just having a real life counterpart that was very famous, or maybe a coaster that I've just ridden previously. And fun fact, a wing coaster, actually, I've never ridden one. I've never been on an actual wing coaster. I plan to go to some, I think in Belgium, there's a park featuring one. I'm gonna have to go there, but like this is one of the few coasters I've not been on, and I really want to do that. Like it's on my list, and it's on position number 2 when it comes to horrific lack of coaster experiences of mine, because the number 1 spot is definitely RMC coaster, RMC hybrid. That is definitely the one coaster I need to do, and if I'm not wrong, I could solve both in the same country and the same region, and not maybe on one day, but maybe on 2 or whatever. It's like Belgium and Netherlands will help me out on that. I think, is it Wallaby? That will give me the chance to ride both of them. But yeah, anyways, so there is a good chance of doing this. By the way, this is the dive loop I was talking about. It's kind of giving us this cool like last effect. You dip down below the station, and the station design we're going to talk about in a bit, because you guys have voted for certain things. I should just quickly mention that, because now it's just bringing back this to the coaster and then smoothing. So the main layout has been done. I will not reveal too much. We've got a couple of beauty shots at the end, and I will not reveal too much of the ride and the POV, because I want you to come back when we theme this thing. I am currently working on a little special for next week's movie release of Star Wars, like, which is Mandalorian and Grogu, not Star Wars. If you've been in my live streams, by the way, highly recommend to check out my live streams. I am streaming multiple times the week at the moment, for a couple of weeks now ongoing. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays most likely. Sometimes we switch up, but join the Discord so you will always know when exactly I'm streaming. And during that time, we've already built quite a lot of this flat ride. So if you're interested, that's a little note to that one. But anyways, for those of you who have been in the live streams, you also have seen this coaster already, but I want you to come back to the channel next time around when we have the theming and so on done, or at least a bit of the theming, and then you can also have a bit of the ride and on ride, because The reason why I'm not putting that into today's video is simply because I feel like there's no theming going on. There are a couple of clipping moments with some trees. There's a tiny bit of smoothing I still have to do, but I wanted to wait for that until I've basically set every theming element in place, so that I can then also check out that the smoothing and stuff fits into the area I wanted to. But yeah, so at the end of the day, as I said, it is a very special moment for me that this just kind of happened to be a thing. And I sat there for like a good 1.5 hours actually to build that coaster. And I wanted to just quickly give a bit of praise to the coaster builder, because there is no way I could have done this type of coaster, or like this coaster, the quality of this coaster in Planet Coaster 1. Not even if I would have spent 10 hours for that, because the coaster builder would have been way too unreliable to me. And yes, it's not a perfect coaster builder in Planco 2, but oh boy, have they actually improved the smoothing and the tools. And like, for someone like me who is not perfect in the 4-meter method at all, and I never wanted to actually learn that, and I'm also not an expert in shaping in general, this tool over here just in general helps me out quite a lot to still achieve what I want to. You know, I have a bit of an idea with the kind of different little techniques you have, like with like going with an overbanked stuff and so on. That works, or like with offset. That's all good, so I can do that. But the rest, the tool is really good to help me smooth out my stuff. Anyways, let's hop on into the theming kind of thing that I wanted to do. So here you can see my wonderful Photoshop in front of you, and I am just kind of drawing a little bit of a idea for the theming. So you guys voted for wood as the base material for the station. I did ask you a couple of things on my community wall, and you decided to go for what color the coaster should be. So I already put the purple in, which was the favorite vote. I asked for the material for the station, which is going to be wood. The theme of the coaster, which is going to be owl. It's all about owls, and I will tell you a bit more about that, because there's a certain story about Black Forest and owls that we can actually use. And then last but not least, we will have a water feature, as well as something else, but I'll get to that later. But anyways, my idea was to make like a huge kind of tree trunk, I should say. Not a tree, but it's like almost like a dead tree trunk over here with a huge open hole poked in the middle, which could kind of be the owl den, like the owl thingy where it's living, and through that you can see the empty coaster going from the unload separation area to the loading separation area, which I think can be really cool at the end of the day. I think it's gonna look really cool once that is done in game, and we have all these root pieces that we can easily use for that, and I think it's gonna be very, very interesting to look. Anyways, second part is going to be the theming of the coaster. This is just a brief sketch over here of an owl that I might want to put on the front of the coaster train, but I'm not entirely sure if I will. Like, it's very close to the Raven theme that the coaster originally comes from, so I may actually change that and make just like an owl's head or so over here, but that was just the idea to put it in. I kind of think it can work, but it could also be problematic in terms of what the people can see, so maybe I have to switch up a little bit the looks of the owl anyways and make it a bit more in a flying position. But like, I will see what I can do about that. But anyways, that is just where I would put the owl in. I just also figured that's way too big. That would even be aerodynamically not functioning as at all. So I put that in here. And just as a little idea, I didn't paint that in, but just so I give myself a little reminder, I think the rest of the car will be done like in a feathery look. So I'm going to make sure that this all looks like a feather effect of like a typical owl. And last but not least, we're going to paint in a little water feature. However, I want to quickly go back to the owl itself. Like, people were aiming for like a snowy owl, but I think as we are in a Black Forest park, I think I want to stick to the theming of the park a little bit more, and we would need to go for the owls that live in the Black Forest actually. So it's more like a European kind of owl going on, or like I don't know the English word for it, but in German it's like the große Uhu. So I don't know if there's like a potential English word for that. Is it a greater owl? I don't know, but it's going to be very interesting. And the water feature specifically is not over the lake. I will maybe do some fountains over the lake too, but I wanted to specifically have a water feature that is going to be here. But because I want to have that next to the pathway and have a bit of a nice theming going on, I'm just going to paint a couple of things in here. But anyhow, we are getting towards the end of the video. There's a couple of little cinematics for you left over, but I want to say thank you already for for watching this video. Thank you for witnessing this moment in time with me while I built a coaster because I wanted to. That is very rarely happening, but here you get some beauty shots, which eventually will look a lot better once this thing is fully done. So until then, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, make sure to subscribe, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Until then, have a good time and goodbye. See you then.